Good day to our distinguished guests and to all the audience. My name is Rui Alves, and I will be the session moderator. Before we start, I would like to share with you the Deloitte's perspective on the session theme. Our understanding is that local content benefiting all is yet a mirage. Although the goals and expectations are clear, that the large projects are expected to significantly contribute to increase countrywide living standards and to sustainable socioeconomic improvement, and that the requirements and enablers for that are also clear. A good regulatory framework, qualified and reliable SMEs, a skilled labor force, a dynamic employment market, access to affordable financing, local content investment programs to promote awareness of business opportunities, procurement market, vocational technical training programs, etc. Also, both the government, civil society, private sector, and companies with high stakes in the large projects are mobilized and actively acting towards this goal. But, according to our understanding, the society and the business community in general still feel that this is not enough. Many believe that only a minority will benefit, and the local share of the value created through exploration of national resources will be small. But we believe that setting a credible path to maximize local content and sustain the socioeconomic development is possible, is achievable. This is the motto of today's session, and we expect to get our panelists' insights and views on this motto. So before we commence with the roundtable discussions, I invite you all to view two short introductory videos. Lisa, back to you.
Fantastic, Rui. Thank you so much. Please may we cue in the video.
Bom dia a todos e bem-vindos. Espero verdadeiramente que esta conferência seja útil a todos e que esta discussão traga valor ao tema do conteúdo local. When I think about how to ensure the future, the first example that crosses my mind is our example. At Deloitte, we have been fortunate enough to have local content as a strategic pillar since we began our operations in Mozambique over 25 years ago. We have always put local talent as a priority, and I'm very happy to say that we're 100% local. We believe this is the only way to ensure a sustainable future, both for our business and the economy. So I would ask you to reflect on this. What does local content really mean for the economy? And I mean it not for you yourself, but for the economy. Is it discussing a law for a few years? Is it promoting local investment? Is it building the workforce of the future or accelerating local industrialization? So I have increasingly seen local content being discussed in Mozambique over the last 8 years, with very few practical examples. Mega projects are not new to Mozambique. We have been able to handle and respond to the demands of significant projects in the past, and nothing stops us from doing it again. Maybe better, as all stakeholders are now more prepared and aligned. To contribute to the discussion of this workshop, I want to share 3 success factors that are critical to this topic. The first one is, in any situation in life, if we don't know where we're going, any direction is good. A clear vision and shared strategic objectives needs to be carved on stone. The vision then needs to be converted into a realistic and integrated roadmap at a country and provincial level to make every stakeholder adhere to it. The second success factor is to create a single stakeholder platform. As there are lots of ideas and conversations around local content, however, there is little stakeholder alignment. It is mandatory that a single alignment platform is created and serve the implementation of this local content vision throughout Mozambique. This means public, private, and civil society involvement and alignment. This plan should then be open to everyone and disseminated throughout the country. The third success factor is to track it. Track it and measure it every step of the way. We will never know if we succeeded if we do not measure and make sure all stakeholders are held accountable while doing so. So the moment to ensure the future is now. And if you're willing to invest in Mozambique, make sure your company's strategy includes local content as a priority. Thank you for participating, and let's gain more knowledge from this workshop.
Good morning. My name is Ovidio Rodolfo. I'm the VP Country Manager for Sasol Mozambique. Today, I'm here to share with you what local content is all about for Sasol. For Sasol, local content is our highest expression of commitment towards socio-economic development of Mozambique in general, and in particularly for our fence line communities. Therefore, Sasol, in coordination with the government of Mozambique, have developed a very clear and measurable local content plan, which was launched in November 2020. The local content plan focuses primarily in 5 key areas as follows. The first one, increase spend with Mozambican registered companies. In other words, local Mozambican companies. This is area 1. The second area is about capacity building for our micro, small, and medium enterprise. The third focus area is around human capital building. In other words, building the capacity to ensure that we do have the very minimum experts in our operations. The fourth one is about increasing the employability of Mozambicans youth. In other words, we are working towards ensuring that the Mozambicans youth are well equipped to enable them to work in all areas of oil and gas industry. The last one, 51, is around research and technology transfer. This is actually what local content means for Sasol. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you found these videos and statements insightful. Let us proceed. It is my honor now to introduce our esteemed speakers for today's technical workshop, starting with Mario Fernandes, partner at the Deloitte Mozambique office, Natalia Kamba, local content director at INP, the National Petroleum Institute, Victor Tirvan, local content director at ENH, Thomas Rodriguez, local content manager at Total, Shauki Musalam, territory manager for Middle East and Africa at Polati from Russia, António Fumo, Local Content Director at Sasol, and Marco Correia, CEO at Duys in Mozambique. I will invite now our guest speakers to give their opening statements on the following question. Is it reasonable to expect or demand already high results given the actual maturity level of the country and of the large oil and gas projects? If you agree, I would like you to share with the audience your views on what can be done to better manage the society and the business community expectations, anxiety, even frustrations, and avoid discredit. If you don't agree, please also share your views if you believe that high results can already be expected from the local content policies and investments. Thank you. I invite to start Natalia Kamba from INP to give her opening statement. Natalia, please. Sorry, Natalia, I think you're still muted. If you can unmute your mic, please. Thank you.
Okay, it's done. If you allow me, thank you for the invitation, and I will do my statements in Portuguese, if you allow me. I think that there is translation regarding this, I'll be more comfortable. Relativo à sua questão, talvez dizer que de princípio concordo com essa questão e
with this question. In case of Mozambique, one of the ways that not only Mozambique but all the countries, one of the manners that we can administrate whatever are the expectative of the local community, I would first say that we have to develop together with the government where we can have all the operators local, so that can have any strategy in our local labor in a way to create more, I would say, what is called share value and creations. And that cannot compromise the dignity of this project, and at the same time, that cannot compromise what are the principles of the economic development and the benefits that the country has to bring for this extraction. That was the first way. It's very important to have a clear strategic, clear vision for our local product that can bring clear objectives, long, short, and medium scale. And in this, it's also important that we can have established all the principals, stakeholders in the same strategy. Who are the main stakeholders? Who are the institutions? What is their plan, and what the plan they each they have, all those involved. In other words, and to administrate all these expectation, we have to look the condition of the market. What are the conditions of the same project, so that we can understand what is the demand in this project and look at what it is, the capability of the country, what does the country has to offer, and look deeply into see what is the gap that exists. So if we find this gap, we have to align what are the strategic so that we can disseminate it, and how can the country have what is called the opportunity or local opportunity that can be implemented and be used properly. And in other words, it's also important to keep these expectations so that all the stakeholders can collaborate, can intervene. They must have their private sector have its own response, the government and the community itself, they must be involved. How can this information must be communicated? What are the strategies must be? How can we disseminate to the population this and what should be done? And at the end, we have to see what is clear, real, and honest. We don't have to start all the objectives which are very high in where our internal capacity will never respond. So that will be a big problem of the to administrate the expectations if we have long goals while we have low capacity. So the other way will to keep this system that all this strategic will bring a result, and the result will be communicated to private sector, will be communicated to the public in general, and all the mechanism that we all will be using, which is important for this private sector. We have to be a clear mechanism so that they can be adhered to, and we can also use some mechanism in a transparent way, and all the entities can also share. And I believe that this mechanism, if it will be well established, will be part of a possibility to have in a local and what can be the benefit for this country and manage what are the expectations of more people around. And thank you very much. Muito obrigado, Natália.
I would say impressive in only 3 minutes. So many challenges. But I think we all agree with all you said. You talked about stakeholders, clear objectives, strategy, alignment, coordination, strong governance, and much more. I invite now Victor Tivan for your opening statement, please.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning,
também vou
everyone.
falar em português.
I'll also speak in Portuguese.
A minha opinião sobre o conteúdo local é que, portanto, Moçambique está quase a iniciar.
Mozambique is almost to start the production of our LNG project in the Rovuma Basin. So one of the challenges that we see in Mozambique is to create a strategic in a way that you can gain more, the maximum on this project to develop our local companies, to implement the local committees, and to accelerate the transfer of the technology. So in relation to other countries, other geographic countries which are ready to explore the gas and power, especially the countries which are in West Africa. I'm talking about Angola, I'm talking about Nigeria, I'm talking about Sudan. They also went through some difficulty to start to explore these activities. But Agora will notice that the design and the application of our local politics, they were poor. The companies, they didn't have the technical capacity and needed to be incorporated in this exploration of gas, so exploitation. So there were also an infrastructure to develop. When I look deeply in our local situation in Mozambique, we will notice that the different stakeholders, the interested parts, that diverted in different ways, that diverted in their missions. For example, the government, which is more interested in to create more labor, to develop infrastructure, develop its own economy, development of GDP and for multinationals. Naturally, for my opinion, I think that is to recover the investment system of procurement, which will be more efficient. But when we look deeply, the other side will look at the private sector. The priority is to get tenders and to explore. And finally, the communities, they also have other priorities. And of the same infrastructure, I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about the hospitals, bridges, and etc. So to create a local labor that is an opportunity for the communities to be involved in these projects. So, although we have this diversity, I think we'll have points which will be, let's just look at the common points that we will be sharing. And one of the points that have been noticed is a legislation that will be in line, firstly, with the development politics of development of the country, and a legislation that will have that can bring more investment, a legislation that in fact will be able to bring some expectation for the people. I'm talking about expectation of the government, that's operators, and the communities. And another aspect that I would like to mention here, you have to have an infrastructure that will be developed, will be facilitated, will be inclusive in the local. So that's a different point. Important, but we can have a legislation, but if you have a structure that will be able to enable that system, that will be very difficult. So the issue of how the financial and technical infrastructure that can facilitate the performance of the companies, I'll call them indigenous companies. When I talk about the registered companies, local companies, that will confuse us. I'm talking about that company that one called Momental old company. It's a company. Mabor, for instance, if it was existent, I'm talking about those traditional companies which are pure Mozambican, which were very interested in our economy. So we know very well that oil and power, in this sector, all the companies, they need to win the tender. So they need to have any guarantee. They have to have elevated power to win these tenders. And if they don't have big tenders, our companies, the payment for our companies, it takes long. It takes as long as 6 months. So our financial system is not yet capable to overtake these challenges. So this is an aspect here that we have to look deeply. The reason why we have some opinions that they say that exist in our local product that can bring some difficulty. So this will be my intervention in relation to local product.
Thank you, Mr. Tivan.
Obrigado, Sr. Tivan.
Very insightful also. Thank you for your inputs.
Obrigado pela sua contribuição também.
I took note that local content legislation it's important to be aligned with the government development policies and plans. Important to understand and address the different stakeholders' expectations of how local content can positively impact on their needs, including the local communities, but not only the private sector, etc. Importance to monitor, to have a monitoring framework, but also a finance framework that will allow for monitoring and facilitate local content development initiatives, and so much more. Okay, thank you. I will invite now Thomas Rodrigues from Total to share his views and his opening statement. Please, Thomas.
Thank you, Rui. So yes, I believe it is important, and we need to stay to be ambitious all the way. After all, we talked about maximization, but the principle itself requires that we do not take current performance for granted. So always seeking to do more. And I think this is what drives local content maximization, and we need to stick to it, not stop at what has been achieved today. So we need to be ambitious, but we also need to be aware So I am aligned and agree on the path to maximize local content, provided, of course, that it still not be taken for granted, and of course, it implies the implication of all stakeholders in the country. So there is and will always be expectation, and for this to be answered, there is a need for information and clear communication channel with stakeholders representative, something that Total has been working on closely, so with the authorities, but also with business association. And if you don't mind, I would just like to share some thoughts for the audience. So I will develop a small business case in 2 minutes just to set some thoughts. So there is a business opportunity to supply 1,000 protective equipment, and in view of developing the market as a business, an entrepreneur, a government, a concessionaire, a business association, I would just ask you to ask yourself the question if you would rather unbundle the scope of work, so for 10 local companies to get this contract, and so we have 10 companies benefiting from small contracts activities, or contract all of them to one single company, knowing that there will be other call for tenders, there will be other business opportunities, or third, have a frame agreement with one company, one local company, to supply all the PPE you need for your project or activities, knowing that you will increase the visibility, business visibility of this company, but you will not share the wealth and opportunity with others. So just ask yourself your question, and then just acknowledge that in Mozambique, and this was information that was fed to us last year, so before COVID, the average visibility of a Mozambican companies was estimated to 6 to 7 months, meaning that after this period, we don't know if the company puts the key under the door. So this visibility is really too short to implement effective capacity building program or invest to scale up its offering. It's not impossible, but it's surely complicated, especially if results are expected on the short term. So the longer the contract, the better it is for the company to develop its offering and competitiveness. Nevertheless, one contract, only one contractor, which also can, sustain some frustration from stakeholders. So of course, the same contractor can have multiple subcontractors, but still, there is a competitive process behind local content and all activities on any activity. So I think it is important the actors involved in this path acknowledge and differentiate immediate impact for the mass, growth, which is not necessarily compatible with the first point, and sustainability, which is supported by activities that go beyond one project, and it's really being done at national level. So I believe these are parts of the elements to proceed in developing a path to maximize local content and social and sustain socio-economic development. So just wanted to share some thoughts to launch the session. Thank you, Rui.
Thank you, Thomas. Very interesting to listen from an IOC perspective. What are the challenges that you are facing, and also the options, the procurement options, and how they must be perceived as impacting in the economy. Very interesting. I invite now Mr. Shauki to give the opening statement that you are facing. And also the options, the procurement options.
Сейчас, как только меня представят.
The economy. Very interesting. I invite now Mr. Shauki.
Yes. Hello? Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, we can. You can start, please.
Hello?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. My name is Shauki Musallam. We thank you for taking part in this conversation today. Perhaps today we would like to give our view, our perspective on the localization opportunities present in Mozambique from the standpoint of a subcontractor. Now, we are a Russian origin company, and we are participating in similar projects to the Mozambique LNG, such as the Yamal LNG, the Arctic 2 project, which has a stake by a total of 20 and 10% respectively. So we have modeled an estimation of the required manpower for scaffolding operations at the Mozambique LNG. And perhaps through this perspective, we could shed some light on how we see the opportunities present and the challenges that are present that need to be tackled. So if we're speaking about the Mozambique LNG project, according to our estimates, it will require about 2 to 3 million man-hours of scaffolding works. This is for the erection and dismantling of scaffolds. Now, it will employ around 500 employees at peak, and this peak period will last for about 1 year. And so the manpower requirement will be growing according to the exhibit that you could see. This is, of course, a tentative exhibit. We are not fully aware of the project schedule in precise, but the more or less the graphics will be going in this way. So when we are speaking about our experience in Russia, for example, to compare and to try to model some of the challenges. Now, Russia is a developed country in the oil and gas sector. Actually, it has a long history and a big infrastructure. And at the same time, when we were engaged in the LNG construction projects, such as the Yamal LNG and the Arctic 2, we saw that there is difficulty for the supplying of skilled manpower to service these projects in Russia, despite all of the infrastructure available here. And a big portion of the work was performed by foreign citizens who are coming and performing these works. So from this standpoint, it is definitely a challenge, and it is a missed opportunity for localization. And to resolve this issue in Russia, we have invested in creating training centers, in developing the training programs, and we have achieved very high results of localization. And from this perspective, we could put some initiatives to discuss for the various stakeholders at the Mozambique oil and gas industry and the government representatives and the other stakeholders. So as a means to try to maximize the localization opportunities and to add some value. Now, it is clear that we have opportunities present, and to fulfill them, investments should be made. So the bigger investments you make, the more opportunities you could unlock. And for this to happen, definitely, we totally agree with Rui that we need discussion, we need transparency, we need commitment, we need understanding that the investments that is going to be made by, for example, for me as representative of private sector, that it will be getting its return. And at the same time, it is bringing value to the various stakeholders and the local communities present. So this is a brief outlook on the initiatives that we make. It represents 4 major points, like establishing local operations in the country, which is necessary due to the operational resource requirement to fulfill the scaffolding job. And as we see it, it is going to happen in the best scenario with the local partner in a joint venture. So this will create opportunity to share management and know-how and technical skills. And additionally, it will help overcome some difficulties with access to finance, since we will be making foreign direct investments. The other thing is establishing a training center. Now, we are aware of the many initiatives present in Mozambique, led by Total, some government initiatives to create training centers. And at the same time, the scaffolding operations job, it's actually very demanding, and there is very high requirements for safety, etc. So it needs a special training center, and it needs dedicated investments. And this is a part that the private sector can come in at. So also we have an initiative to make some abroad scholarships. We are open to discuss bringing engineers and support staff, technical support staff from Mozambique to Russia. We have unique access to similar projects in the Mozambique LNG construction project. And of course, we have an initiative for women inclusion. We have 30% of our staff women, despite being a service provider in the construction sector. which is more job for men. So in this perspective, this is the opportunities that we see, and this is the initiatives that we are putting to the table to discuss. We are having a separate session, workshop session, which will be starting later today. So we invite all the interested stakeholders to join us to perhaps have a discussion there, and we look forward to communicating that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shawki, for bringing your experience and the views of a large subcontractor. I would say that sometimes too much focus and demand is put on IOCs, but definitely subcontractors will play a major role in training people, in procuring locally for services and goods, for skills and technology transfer. And so local content development strategies and policies must definitely align with your needs, your objectives, and promote a good engagement of the subcontractors into this process. Definitely. Thank you. I invite now Antonio Fumo for your opening statement, if you mind.
Thank you very much, Rui. Good morning, colleagues. I'm going to share Sasol experience. You remember that Sasol is in Mozambique in the last 2 decades. So we play a key role in terms of economic development of Mozambique, and one key aspect is local content. So in 2019 we partnered with the government of Mozambique, and we approved 5-year local content plan that has got clear KPIs that govern the implementation of the same plan. In that plan, key aspect is increase the procurement spend in Mozambique. So we change our procurement strategy to ensure that we create opportunity for small and medium enterprise by unbundling big scopes and setting aside also ring fencing for national some of the scopes. We also acknowledge that there is a capacity needs in terms of increase to local suppliers. So we design an enterprise supplier development program that will help our local suppliers to increase their capacity, specifically on the areas of legal requirements, human resource, financial management and accounting, marketing and design. Part of the creating of capacity building, we also creating the development fund that will support SMEs in terms of starting up their small business, or even paying some of the invoice if they cannot wait for the contractual terms and condition in their contract. So this fund can support them in that regard. But not less important is the human capital development, where we understand that our workforce needs to be trained, and also it's important that we create opportunity for exposure for our employees, but we also train people as a general in our vocational training center that we give to the community to use to make these people be marketable in terms of employment opportunities. In terms of research and development, Sasol is contributing to a fund that will create a common lab that will be managed by the Ministry of Science and Technology, and this lab will be installed at University Eduardo Mondlane, and it will be used from different all international companies that may want to invest in that area. A part of the human capital development as well is the internship programs, bursary programs, and also in terms of skills transfer, when we do have expats in Mozambique. So we have a skills transfer program to transfer knowledge to the local workforce to be able to continue with the operation. So we believe that sustainable operation is the key to go, is the way to go. But there are these challenges that are in the market, being our country new in this kind of industry, but this is the contribution that Sasol is giving currently.
Thank you, Mr. Antonio Fumo. Very interesting. Sasol is by no doubt one of the most experienced companies in the country in local development, and has a lot to contribute, to teach and to share in terms of very good case studies of how local content must be and can be promoted and the impact in the country. So thank you a lot for your contributions. And finally, I invite Marco Correa from Duys for your opening statement. Please, Marco. Sorry, Marco, please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks, Rui. Once again, morning, everyone. I think I'm feeling quite prestiged to be able to have this opportunity, and as well to hear everyone's opening statements, where I agree with a lot that has been said. Answering your question, Rui, I believe it is reasonable for us to demand high results, simply because it's a high results sector. It's a sector that demands quality, it demands speed, it demands assurity. And given the current scenario that we have at the moment with all of these stakeholders that are engaged and involved, I think we will be able to achieve high results. The question that arises then is, what do we consider high results? Number one, and from our perspective, high results would be immediate engagement with the private sector in regards to the sector. And this is something that we already are seeing. This is something that is already happening. In terms of managing expectations, unfortunately, time is not something that we all have, because this is something that is moving with a bit of speed for the level of experience and capabilities that our local companies currently have. So we should be able to try and understand each other, communicate better, find out what are the difficulties that the local companies are having at the moment, and what exactly are the expectations that big contractors, IOCs, subcontractors are having. So from our experience at Duys Mozambique, we are an engineering and heavy steelworks company. And we've been fortunate to have some involvement already in the oil and gas sector. And from that, we're engaging and we're learning from doing, by practice, by being active. And I think that's one of the ways that we can all start managing these expectations, actually starting to get the companies on board. Whether it's through unbundling, whether it's by awarding through one company as the business case study that Thomas was proposing to us, we have to start somewhere. And once we start to eliminate this anxiety, we start to understand, and we have to be able to be humble enough to understand what our weaknesses are at the moment, where do we need to improve in terms of technical aspects, in terms of skills gaps, and on the other hand, we need to value as well what we're actually capable of doing and what we have been doing with a good rate of success. With regards to one of the aspects of the expectations that we need to manage is basically the market distortions that we're having. And the best way, we believe, is to have a stronger communication between all stakeholders, a stronger engagement, whether it's through at the moment, whether it's through a B2B context between two companies, contractors and subcontractors, whether it's through government institutions or associations. This is something that we must be able to promote more frequently and be very honest with each other to try and see where is the best fit, where is the best match.
Thank you, Marcos, so much. Very interesting, the perspective of the private sector. And it's clear that the importance of communication and engagement, regular communication, regular engagement of the private sector with the IOCs and the large subcontractors. And it's really interesting to see that you feel ready to participate and to invest and eager to participate and play a role in local content development. It was really interesting to get insights from such a diverse panel representing so much different stakeholders and looking at your views, expectations, challenges, which complement each other. Thank you. Yolisa, I hand over to you to continue the session.
Thank you so much, Rui. Thanks so much to the panelists. This is a form of a quick announcement to all our audience members. First of all, we'd like to send a formal apology for the audio technical run this morning. Please do be advised that the English and Portuguese channel is now up and running. And lastly, I would like to encourage everyone to please send through their questions on the live chat box. You may see it right on top and also on the side. So please do send through your questions through the live stream of the English channel and the live stream of the Portuguese channel so that we may pose it to our speakers. Back to you, Rui, to start off the side poll question. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolisa. So let's proceed now. I invite all the audience to now vote and participate on the poll questions that we will be providing on the platform. Yolisa, I don't know, can you support me with the poll questions?
Sure, let's get our team to pop up the side poll questions. If you may give it 1 minute.
Thank you.
All right, polls are up. Polls are up, ladies and gentlemen. We will give you 1 minute. If you may kindly repeat the question, Rui, and the options while everyone is choosing the percentage, please, and give them a few seconds to respond. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, what can be the most impactful strategy to maximize local content in Mozambique's oil and gas industry? And the options provided are A, promoting the creation of joint ventures between international and local companies for technology skills transfer. B, building industry enhancement centers. And C, fostering an investor-friendly environment. You can please vote.
All right, the polls are coming in. Fantastic. Thank you to everyone. I'll hand it over to you now, Rui, to present the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now we will proceed to a presentation. I invite now Mário Fernandes, my colleague, to deliver a quick presentation. Mário, you can start.
Hi, Rui. Thank you for the opportunity. It was very interesting to hear everyone speak with their opening statements. The way I've positioned this presentation is really to cover why is Mozambique doing this in terms of local content, specifically which areas should it cover, and secondly, what are the lessons from some of the other countries that we can consider. I think this sets a nice base for the discussion thereafter. What we've seen in studying a lot of the case studies is that a lot of these local content initiatives are not new. There's lots that we can learn from other countries. It's a path that's been walked on before, so it's important for us to consider that when we think through how we address the key areas that are important to us. So if I continue, this is a framework from a well-known economist called Porter from Harvard, and he did the study on what are the competitive advantages of nations, right? How do nations differentiate each other? And this is an important slide for Mozambique to consider, because ultimately, as Marco was saying, quality and standards is how we will all be judged, and Mozambique is no different. And what this economist has said is that we need to drive increased productivity. If we can do that, we can differentiate ourselves as a country and succeed in attracting investment in building local content. So ultimately, if we want to play effectively in the game of the big leagues with all these companies, as a country, we need to drive productivity. And what Porter says in his study is that there are a couple of factors that we need to drive. We need to transform the low skill base. We need to increase the knowledge and increase the enabling infrastructure that would help local content succeed. Just to add to that, World Bank did a study that shows the cost of poor roads, lack of electricity, lack of water, sanitation, etc., adds up to 40% to the cost of doing business. So just think of that and how that is putting us at a disadvantage as a country. And we all know this is a big gap in Mozambique in terms of the enabling infrastructure. So what does this Porter framework say is that the role of the government is to act as a catalyst and to create world-class factors that I just indicated so that we are world-class in terms of all this infrastructure. If we can do this, we will stimulate the attractiveness and competitiveness of Mozambique as a country. So what would a program for Mozambique's local content look like? What are the key areas that are important to us? It's around these 5 pillars that I show you here. Skills development, we heard a lot about this from our panelists. It's SME development, how these companies participate, finance, and agriculture. Agriculture really drives about 80% of small, medium enterprises in Mozambique. It's a big contributor to creating jobs. So if we're going to be successful, finding an effective way on how the benefits and revenues generated from the oil and gas sector can drive agriculture will be key. And what this implies is a lot of collaboration, because you can't put an oil and gas engineer suddenly doing farming. So as a government, as an institute, there has to be collaboration, coordination, cross-sector, cross-platforms, cross-ministries on how the benefits from all of these investments can have positive impact in clusters, in value chains, and so forth. And then the last one is technology transfer and innovation. And lots of companies have shown this. Brazil is a very good case in point, that without the intellectual property, without the technology, Mozambique will always be, or its companies will always be one step behind, and never actively play in this field. Companies are very protective of this IP, so it's important that as a government we create the right conditions and rules of the game to encourage this kind of knowledge transfer. Otherwise, the protective nature of this competitive advantage that will always be held back from some of these investments. So how do you create a level playing field that is both fair for these international companies to share their technology and feel comfortable in sharing it, but still be effectively compensated is what some of the challenges involve. An overview of what does local content look like in the country at the moment. It's important to note there is no local content law currently. There's drafts, but there isn't a law. And everyone has been waiting for a law to come. It's been significantly debated. What does exist are these 3 regulations. So there is a regulations on hiring international workforce, which basically stipulates a set of quotas. There's also a regulation on resettlement process for the impacted areas. So if a fungi up there in the north is impacted, how must those local communities benefit directly from this? There is that. And then there is a specific regulation that will govern the oil and gas projects for around the Rovuma area. Some interesting things come out of this regulation that was released in 2014. It says that the local content plan must be updated every 3 years, which I think is very positive because it provides a platform for this dialogue that I heard from Thomas, that I heard from the other speakers on how important it is to create this common alignment. And what I heard from Natalia in terms of the short, mid, and long-term goals. The objective of creating this 3-year plan and updating it was really done with that objective. So I think that's very positive. It provides a 10% price advantage to local companies. So if the local company is up to 10% more expensive and quality is not sacrificed, which is an important condition, those companies can be hired. It provides more specific criteria in terms of competition and how these local content companies must be given the opportunity to participate, as opposed to having all the procurement done elsewhere. And it provides it specifies a specific role for INP as the regulator to oversee and to intervene in the local content implementation if necessary. The key thing that's being debated in terms of the new law that is still everyone is still waiting is the concept of domiciliation of local content. So what that is, there's a debate whether the best way to maximize local content is to have Mozambican companies from the start have equity and drive a lot of the work and projects in Mozambique, or do we go through a gradual approach where we promote international collaboration to encourage knowledge transfer and not be so stringent on local content requirements to encourage international companies to come and then transfer skills. Ultimately, both approaches have the same goal of ensuring Mozambican companies participate more. The debate is which way is more effective. In terms of some achievements to date from local content, there's been already approximately 4,000 people trained in the first wave over the last 10 years. The second wave is really focused on technical oil and gas skills. Some of these we heard as well in this call. ENH has established the Linkar program. I encourage that people look into that as well to increase private sector involvement. CTA, the business association, local business association, has created ProNascer to certify Mozambican companies to play in this field. Area 1 is doing well at the moment in terms of achieving almost 80% of the targeted 5,000 jobs. And there is an ongoing certification process for SMEs, where 2 to 3 companies have already been certified, which is great. And a business development center has been set up in Pemba. So these are some great success stories. Where are we? What are some challenges that we face going forward? So on the left, we've got a study done by the IFC, an institution from the World Bank, which shows the efficiency of government investments. So it shows a PIB per capita. PIB is GDP, so it's GDP per capita as a percentage of total investment. So obviously you want to increase that. That is, for every GDP point you add to the economy, how much did you add of those points to the amount that was invested? If you look, Mozambique in gray is right at the bottom, which shows that we as a country have not been very effective in maximizing how these investments, these mega projects, contribute to GDP. Whereas countries like South Africa, which have been at it for a long time, have done quite well. But I think what's positive here is to look at Angola and Ghana, which are relatively new, like ourselves, and through good policy, good local content programs, have been very effective at starting to move up. And this is encouraging for Mozambique, because this is something that we should be looking to achieve as well. So what are the key takeaways from this? Is that we need to drive better infrastructure, as I had mentioned before. We have to increase qualified workforce, and we have to address some of the security issues. So here's a detailed view of the local challenges. I'm not going to go into it. I don't think we have much time, but this complements the previous slide. I think important here to touch on is the enabling environment. I didn't talk on this before. Some people talked about skills and the development of SMEs. I think the enabling environment is very important. So the government needs to prepare itself in terms of creating national strategies, objectives, infrastructure, financing, having adequate visibility into what's happening, and working processes between it and all the players, being operators, private sector, and society. Very important to create the right enabling environment. I'm now going to talk through a few of the case studies. I'm not going to go in depth. This is quite extensive. But what I've done here is, for each of the pillars of the challenges that you saw in the previous slide, is what are some examples from other countries on how they've succeeded. So the first one is the enabling environment. How does government of Mozambique ensure the enabling environment and involvement of its citizens? It's very important here to draw the example of the Ghana example. Ghana discovered oil and gas recently over the last, 10 to 20 years. They've found some big discoveries of oil and gas. What do? And there's a statement from the Norwegian minister who said this, is that what Norway took 25 years to do, Ghana was able to do in 25 days in terms of setting up the fund. So what's the lesson here? There's a lot that we can learn from others' experience as we aim to develop our own policies. So They did it in 25 days, and they took a lot of the lessons from Norway. They collaborated with NORAD and PETRAD, which are two institutes in Norway around helping other countries that have similar riches, natural resources to evolve in their own journeys. And they spent a lot of time with that experience creating effective short, mid, and long-term planning, just like Natalia was saying. They created the right policies, laws, and legislation. They created the right institutional frameworks on how everyone collaborates. They created the right mechanism for funding and how the funding trickles through everything that needs to be financed. And it's now one of the great success stories, Ghana, on the back of all these lessons. I think the other very important thing that they did that I believe it will be critical in Mozambique is creating these transparency mechanisms. They have very active civil society organizations. They actually have something like 300 civil society organizations. What happened here is 60 of them organized themselves to really focus and look at oil and gas and what the government was doing, and to scrutinize both private sector and government on what was happening in the sector. It added tremendous amount of visibility and transparency. There was a lot of town halls, and this has sustained. And this is one of the big success stories on Ghana. How all the report, there's a yearly report that is issued that the civil society organization publishes, very well respected and trusted as a credible source of information. I think this is something that should be looked to replicate. In terms of developing small medium enterprises, SMEs, Chile in South America is a great success story on how they've transformed the copper belt. They are probably the second or third largest copper producer in the world. They've got some of the largest reserves in the world. And their story is also a very recent story on how they have managed to drive things like cluster initiatives. They don't look at individual opportunities in the value chain. They look at clusters because they saw that as their competitive advantage. So if they had to compete with Australian and American companies that were also operating in the economy, how do they, as a country, demonstrate their competitive advantages? So they showed linkages in a value chain. What do I mean by that? Is that if you have, for example, someone who's looking to do food production, but also is looking to do catering and cleaning services, is how do you set up between those three companies in the economy partnerships so that when they present a joint offering or a value proposition to the operator or to the EPCs, it's a significant competitive advantage to what an international player would have. So establishing business linkages, looking at it from a cluster perspective is critical. So they invested significantly in this cluster approach. They standardized the tender pre-qualification and certification processes with suppliers. So instead of having this driven only by the IOCs, there was a lot of collaboration and involvement of government on how some of these rules were jointly defined with them. Moving on to Uganda, I think something that's very important. Sorry, we can't hear you, Louisa.
Can you hear me, Mario? We are running slightly over for the event. Apologies for that. There was a very, very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. There's a lot of questions coming in from the audience. If we may kindly wrap up to the panel discussion, and if there's any further questions that the audience would like to pose to you, I will send them directly to you, Mario. Thank you so much to connect. But over to you, Rui. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. I was trying also to stop Mario. Thank you for that. I will give the opportunity to the panel to comment on Mario's presentation. I think it was a good piece of knowledge shared by Mario. Very interesting. So I will invite now again our guest speakers for a roundtable discussion on some questions that I will drop. And I will start by addressing to Thomas a question quickly. And sorry, but we will now reduce the time dedicated to the roundtable, the discussion session, because we are quite ahead of time. So Thomas, may you please highlight to the audience on how the oil, gas and power industry can serve as a vector for promoting development in Mozambique? Please.
Yes, thank you, Rui. So I think the first one is incomes. So for the country, on the short term, of course, with the revenue generated from the extra activities in country, but also on the long term, and these revenues will have to be will be growing and gradually growing to support the nation. So that's one. The second one is in regards to capacity building. So I won't go into details, but I'm just going to highlight on the main topics. But there is a support to institutions that, so collaboratively, we're extending capacity for the processing of permits, customs. This is just for example, but this is just to say that the operator is working with the authorities. So of course, to meet the need of mega projects. So lots of activities in a short amount of time. Not just to institutions, but also to local companies. So we mentioned business visibility earlier, so that's one. Addressing gaps to competitiveness through promotion of partnerships. So we are participating actively with business delegation, with business associations, but also organizing some very specific session for local companies and international players to meet up, develop their local offering, build partnership. This is very important to us, and this allows for I want to say much shorter impact in time, so we can expect a short-term result, and also coaching. So in regards to this, it was highlighted, but just want to I take the occasion. So we just launched our first pilot to support local SMEs through the enterprise development program, and this will gradually scale up. And I just want to highlight that also for Todd, but this program was also designed to promote the use of local training providers. So it's a program that keeps the local content philosophy reaching first and to what is available in the country, then after build what is in the country so it can be more competitive before seeing and reaching out for external services out of the country. So regards to local companies, just want to highlight, so that's about it, the big picture. Then we talk about support to Mozambicans, to national workers. So different set of trainings to support employability. So that's an easy one. That's the first one that is being it's mass training also to make sure contractors and the whole supply chain as a whole. As a reminder, it's more than 400 companies to date for Mozambique LNG in Mozambique, so it's quite wide. So we need to develop a soft skill and be sure that they are prepared to be onboarded in the supply chain. Class training. And of course, last but not least, the development of skills as part of Mozambique LNG activities. We don't talk of it enough, but development skills is key. And just to give you some numbers, some representation, before a worker be deemed autonomous on a work site, it is 9 to 15 years average. So it takes a long time for someone to develop skills to be autonomous. So of course, it can be much shorter, but it's just to say development of skills are important, and exposure to mega project activities are a massive contribution to local competitiveness. Of course, still about training, we have some high-end quality training. We are training nationals to be operators, so this is long-term training, class training. They will be sent abroad, on-the-job training on site, and then. Of course, and we have work, so employment for Mozambicans and for companies. So in addition, I just want to add that since local content is a multi-party effort, the ability of local stakeholders to be reactive and address challenges as well as opportunity is key. especially with this amount of investment where planning is really key on mega project. Local content is again not something to be taken for granted. It relies on involvement on several parties. And in short, the performance is dependent on local participation. So I'm almost finished, not to worry, but just want to conclude by saying, as such, the challenging environment that mega project creates in the country is an excellent context to highlight areas for improvement. Again, national content is all about maximization, so nothing is taken for granted. And we should use this context to constantly challenge yourself to increase the performance and provide some solutions that can have long-term impact in the country. So I will end up with this and leave the rest for another time.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Very clear, your explanation of what are your priorities and what you value most in terms of promoting local content development. I don't know if any of our colleagues in the panel want to comment anything or address a question to Thomas before we proceed to the next question. Okay, thank you. I would like now to address a question to Victor. Victor, as the local content director for ENH, what would be your perspective on the pillars of success for local content in the country that the key stakeholders should partake in? Can you share your views on that with us, Victor, please? I would also ask all the panelists to switch on your cameras if you can, please, as we are on the round table now.
Yes. First of all, the legislations, it is the first pillars. The legislation that meets the expectation of all the stakeholders. I'm talking about the government, I'm talking about the multinational, the private sectors, and the communities. And the last pillars, to understand the last pillars, that is very important to understand the barriers that prevent the involvement of indigenous companies in the oil and gas sectors. First of all, is high technical standards requested by the sectors. The lack of track record for our business. The lack of financial and technical support. I said that normally these sectors is requiring large collaterals. Payments also is taking long times. So these barriers that are facing by our companies. So definitely, the last pillars that we need is a national technical financial structures that can support the insertions and performance of local companies in the oil and gas sectors. This is my view. Okay, thank you, Victor. Anyone wants to comment on what Victor just said about reducing the barriers for private sector participation and development, and also on legislation?
Hello?
Yes, Natalia? Please.
Yes, probably I could add, thank you, Victor, excellent points that you mentioned. Probably I will also add on the capacity development. I will divide this in three main aspects. Capacity development on the short and mid-term. And for the short term, probably I will look to how to maximize the participation of the locals in the construction, where we have much more a large number of a workforce. And I will also head another sector, which will be looking to the potential and strategic sectors and sustainable sectors of the economy in Mozambique. What could be the sectors that you could link and create not only back linkage, but also forward linkage in order to create sustainability and create a legacy in this oil and gas sector. So for instance, I will name 2 or 3 sectors that I think that they are sustainable for the development, for the economic development. And I would indicate the agriculture, which is the sector that we in Mozambique have a lot of potential. We have a lot of people that are in agriculture. So we have in this sector one of the bases of development of Mozambique. So how do we insert agriculture in the value chain of the oil and gas? Since that's for the construction phase of all the project, we will have absolutely almost more than 20,000 of people that will need 3 meals every day during at least 4 years. And we are talking about not only one project, we are talking about the second project, which is also Rovuma LNG. And we're talking also about the potential that we have in the Mozambique Basin. So putting this in perspective, the amount of food that we will need can also be something that can be actually linked with the oil and gas sector. And I will put also another sector, which will be the industry, the mechanical, metallurgical, and also electrical industry. So I will just stay in these 2 that I think that probably can be one of the pillars of the economic development. And a part of this, we also have to deal with, to create and to strengthen the sectors, we will have to look how do we stimulate the production and productivity, how can we create lines of access to finance, how can we capacitate those companies, how can we improve the industrialization with the sectors. So this is what I would like to also add. And thank you, Vitor, very good points you did raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia, for your contributions and for bringing to our attention the importance of creating linkages between the oil and gas industry with other sectors of the economy, like agriculture and other that you mentioned, in order to create a multiplier effect, let's say, in the development of the economy. Any other contributions from the panel regarding opportunities or challenges? I had a question to launch to the panel, so let me take this opportunity just to close on that discussion. Okay, thank you. I will now. I would like now to put a question to all of you, and please feel free to comment. That is, can planning and setting a shared vision for a development strategy and path make people believe that local content can have an impact in the country? And as we have here representatives of government and public institutions, but also private companies, I would ask, what do you think is needed in terms of setting this planning and setting a shared vision for a development strategy, and what is missing regarding this?
If I could say, please.
Yes, Mr. Turkey, please.
Rui, I think if we are looking at the results of the poll that you're running now, we see that the results are showing that 40% have the poll is about the most impactful strategy to maximize local content in the Mozambique oil and gas industry, and 40% of the results are pointing that it's the creation of joint ventures between international and local companies for technology and skill transfer, while 50% is going for upscaling education. And from perhaps our experience in our mother market in Russia, this is precisely the story that we have faced. So there was we acting as a contractor for the construction of major oil and gas fields. We were witnessing a constant agony and struggle by major contractors to fulfill the projects on time, to have the required skilled labor provided, and big portions of the works were performed by foreign workers, despite the fact that Russia is actually one of the largest producers of oil and gas, and the commercial history of production of oil and gas is dating back to the middle of the 19th century. The first production well was put in 1864. So and there's a huge and massive technological and base in Russia. But when we are speaking, for example, in terms of scaffolding operations, it's a precise scope of work, which is not small, it's big enough. So if we're speaking about the Mozambique LNG project, as I mentioned earlier, there will be around, according to our estimates, around 500 to 600 scaffolders working on the project at peak time, which will be lasting for 1 year. So this was a missed opportunity that was present here in Russia. And the creation of training centers that we have started here in Russia have enabled us to provide the skilled labor from the local market. And today we are providing thousands of jobs here for locals. And definitely you need to put a tie-up between the private sector, the educational initiatives, and the other stakeholders in order for there to be environment that is safe and that is reliable for private sector to put investments. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Let Thomas want also to comment on that, please, Thomas.
Yes, thank you. So just wanted to say that in my opinion, there is an opportunity to improve the transparency and access to market information, which would not only assist the local stakeholders, but which also allow to assess their competitiveness, allow them to build plans to grow their activities, but also support large investment to build the local offering. Here we talked about a training center. I think there's a lot of opportunities in this regard, which would make all the more sense and all the more easier to implement if everyone put forward the needs for it. It's easy for external actors to assess if it is an investment opportunity or not. So this is not necessarily existing today, or I think there is a margin for improvement. In doing so to facilitate a global understanding of the Mozambican market and allow for more effective local content strategy, but also transparent monitoring. Performance is always, performance assessment always have to be done against a baseline, a benchmark. And so I think that transparency and market information are key here to set this baseline. This is my contribution.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Access to information, transparency, really, really important. Agree. Antonio, you also want to comment? And then Marco. But please, Antonio.
Yes, thank you, Rui. I think one important aspect as well is for us to identify what we can call the tier one categories that the local suppliers can do in Mozambique, because there are some categories that local suppliers already are doing, like transport, logistic, catering, service, civils, etc., installations of equipment. But not less important is for us to make our local suppliers understand that sometimes for you to overcome the barrier, you need a partner. So partnership is very important for not only to transfer knowledge, but also to have the necessary technical support and necessary financial support. Sometimes your partner can be financial strong, but also technical strong. So partnership is not a bad thing. So it is important that our local suppliers understand that partnering is not a bad thing. They can partner between themselves, but they can also partner with international suppliers. On the other hand, the financial support is also key, as some of them are small in terms of size, and these oil and gas projects require a lot of infrastructure investment. So it must be a way to continue to support these local suppliers in order for them to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are lying ahead of them. So as a Sasol, we remain committed to local content development and will continue to support our Mozambican economy in terms of development.
Thank you, Antonio. Very interesting and clear. That the private sector must be clear about their weaknesses and also how they can overcome them, including through partnerships, as you said. Marco, you also wanted to comment, contribute?
Thanks, Rui. If we're going to be doing a shared vision for development strategy and create this path of development for this local content, in our planning process, we must understand that we need to be able to learn from other countries, other markets' mistakes. I think that's the first thing that we must be very humble about, because we're not going to be the best always. We can be the best during a specific period in time in terms of competitiveness, pricing, costs, but the global markets is evolving, and we are competing globally for this sector. So if you ask me what is missing, we are missing access to financing. We're missing skills development. We're missing technical mentoring. We're missing a more hands-on practice, B2B engagement, whether with partnerships or whether with IOCs or subcontractors, whatever it may be. And I think the first thing that must happen is that as Mozambicans, we must not misunderstand confidence with capacity. We have a lot of confidence in ourselves. We know we are capable of doing it, but we need to be armed and ready with the right partners that are genuinely interested in developing the local content with us. And we need to be equipped with the right skills, with the right technical mentor, and with cheap financing. This is what we feel.
Affordable funding. Yeah.
Affordable funding. Exactly. Thanks. That's what we're missing, because everything else we have labor, we have people that are easily. We can skill them easily. We can teach them easily. We've already had experience with mega projects, and today you see big companies that were here established 20 years ago, and now you have top management people in those companies who are Mozambican. You have top management Mozambicans managing large mega projects in Mozambique. So this is already a positive sign, all right? So we just need to try and accommodate this adaptation to what the oil and gas sector is, which is highly demanded. It's a very high demanding sector.
Yeah. Thank you, Marco. Very clear. The shared vision must also be clear about these weaknesses and the enabling environment that Mario was talking about before, where mechanisms like you mentioned, access to funding and other are critical, on top of the legislation that must be put in place to support local content development. Natalia, you asked also to participate on the discussion, please.
Yes. Actually, I would just like to add one important aspect, which is the commitments. if we really want to implement local content, there is a need to have commitments from all parts, including the government commitment to create that kind of enable environment. But the commitments have to be from the operators when they actually produce a local content plan and they commit that they're going to train companies, they're going to train the workforce, they're going to also provide some opportunities, they're going to be open, they're going to be transparent. This kind of commitments that it's been approved at a higher level needs to really be implemented. And for other side, there is also a commitment from the private sector. The private sector cannot only be waiting that everything is being done. They have to be part of this. They also have to be transparent. They also have to know what are the constraints and come out with some solutions also to help on this. This is the first one. The other one that I would like to mention here, it's regarding the logistic and procurement management sectors. It's very important. If you want to do local content for a foreign company, it's important to understand what is the local environment. What are the main potentialities of the country? Okay, so those teams need to be very, very open and very transparent when they conduct their intelligent markets, because they know what can be used in Mozambique. They know this, and then they have to include this in the value chain. This is one aspect. The second aspect is regarding in case that you don't have capacity locally, you can stimulate that kind of partnership. It's very complicated to stimulate JVs, okay, but there are other ways. There are some other types of partnership, not legal binding. They are subcontracting strategies. They are things that you can put on your criteria of procurement that company needs to, for that specific opportunity, contract a Mozambican company, because you know that you have in country that capacity. They are ring fence, for instance, for some particular aspects that you know that only you have a variety of Mozambicans that can provide this. So there are a lot of strategies to actually show that kind of commitment. And for the third thing and the last one, it's regarding the outsourcing responsibilities. For instance, in Mozambique, as you know, we have those laws we did mention here, but it's normal. It's not only in Mozambique, the laws are progressing, they change, they are updated according to the environment, according to the economic situation, political situation, and they can have that gaps. And when it comes to the contractors and subcontractors, there is a kind of gap, but it is clear that there are responsibilities for the operator, that when they adjudicates a contract, that responsibility have to be passed immediately for the contractor. And the contractor as well, they have to pass that responsibility for the subcontractor. So the local content rules does not only apply for the operator, they apply for all, they have to be applied in cascade. So the subcontractor also have to comply with the local content obligations. So don't outsource the responsibilities when it comes to comply with the local content obligation. Those are the main aspects that I would like to contribute.
Very clear. Thank you, Natalia. Well, we must close. We are already running out of time. But before we close the roundtable, I would like to challenge you and share a wish or a dream with the audience. My question to you is that imagine how would you like to see Mozambique changed in 10 to 15 years from now? Share with us a vision or a wish or a dream as a result of successful local content development strategies. Who wants to start? Please, Shauki. Share with us your dream.
Yeah, I'm covering the Middle East. I'm being to UAE and Kuwait and other Middle Eastern countries. And Mozambique, with a line of projects in LNG that are in place now, is putting it in a real perspective of becoming a country like Qatar and UAE and Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. So these countries, it's not impossible because these countries have developed really quickly and they have put big milestones and developed these communities and the infrastructure. So of course, I will be happy to see Mozambique developed in such a scenario very shortly.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wants to share a dream?
Yes, in 10 years' time, my dream would be to see that our operation in Teman is fully operated by Mozambican. We are about to reach that milestone. We are above 90% in terms of localization of the workforce. But obviously, as Mozambicans, our dream is to see that the company one day is fully operated by Mozambican. It's also my dream that the economic impact is seen in our ring fencing communities, that the purchasing power increase on those communities that surround our operation, and that we have some Mozambican engineers already working together with international companies on the drilling projects and other high professional project, that the skills transfer plan will really have made the necessary impact that we can have some Mozambicans already included on those projects. That's my dream.
Fantastic, Antonio. Anyone else has a dream?
Actually, I would like to hear the pundit say, I say my dream. I would like to hear Marco first.
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Well, I have a lot of dreams, guys, but I have a dream that in 10 years, we can have a thriving industry in the north of Mozambique, where oil and gas plays a big role in this development of the industry. And I would like to see adjacent industries growing due to the oil and gas. And obviously a big diverse export market for our country, so that we can show off our product with quality and competitiveness around the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco.
My dream in 10 years is to see Mozambique with infrastructure development. Mozambique with a road from south, a big road, national highway from south to the north. And also our company, local company with capability to supply to the Taiwan. I mean that CCGV to be replaced by Mozambican companies. This is my dream.
Thank you. Natalia, do you want to share your dream with us?
My dream is that in 10 years, we can have an optimization. When I say optimization, I'm not only saying maximization, but optimization of the local content strategy implementation. What this means, I would like to see that we had created a local workforce with a competence, with a transferable competence, actually, because we are not relying only on the oil and gas sector. At that time, the construction will be finished and the project will be run. With that workforce that could be also serve other sectors, especially we have mining sector, we have a very active extractive industry, we will have agriculture as well. With a transferable competence, we can have, a competent and qualified workforce. I would like to see this first. Second, I would like to see the same way some Mozambican companies that could be also trained and could be with enough qualification to serve not only the oil and gas, but to serve also the production phase and serve other sectors around, and also serving the region. So become international, serve South Africa, serve Zimbabwe, serve Namibia. We don't have this much with the oil and gas. This is what I would like to see.
Thank you, Natalia. Just to confirm if you've finished, because I lost for some seconds connection.
I'll go just very short. So thank you, everyone. I think we all have share a bit of the dream, but I just want to add, for me, and personally, but it would be for Mozambique to be a model of development, but also a diversified economy that is not solely relying on oil and gas industry. So we talked about best practice earlier. I think we will see that this is something that comes out at practices to be avoided. And on this particular point, also for initiatives that are launched today to still be sustainable and enhanced in the future, and so gradually improved and benefiting the future projects in the country. And on that, I just want to add with something, but it's to say that in Mozambique, and this is my testimony, I see really thriving stakeholder, very motivated youth, innovative initiative, and there is a full environment, and nothing highlights or gives us red flag that this is not something possible. So this is my share to all.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all. Well, thanks a lot to all of you for your contributions to these quick roundtable discussions. Very insightful. As we are late, I will jump quickly to the Q&A session. I will just focus on two questions that were selected from so many that we got during the session from the audience. The first one that was selected is from Andrew Beamer, and the question is: are developers or prospective developers required to provide a training component through either funding or education to make sure local Mozambican workers are capable of performing the work? Anyone from the panel want to give a response on this or clarification? Anyone eventually from a government institution? Natalia, Victor?
Could you clarify the question?
I can repeat the question. Please. Yeah, sure.
Please, I'm sorry.
The question is, are developers or prospective developers required to provide a training component through either funding or education to make sure local Mozambican workers are capable of performing the work? Or Thomas from Total or from Sasol, is this a requirement?
So, just answering for Total, but as part of activities, yes, all international contractors, and even when it's even more when they are technically complex, we reach out to core experts from the industry and we ask them to operate a transfer of technology and competences. So, as part of which local content, and I'm talking for Tech One or activities, is fully part of our technical evaluation. So they have to provide a competitive proposal, and they have to provide a proposal on capacity building. And this is something we pay particularly attention, especially when there is a highly technological component, because we know there'll be less subcontracting opportunities, so they need to compensate with more training and qualitative one.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Very clear. Anyone wants to add anything before we go to the second question?
Yes, just to add on what Thomas said. A part of this, according to the decree law, and also according to the regulation of petroleum obligations, those companies need to present a local content plan, including a training plan and also a workforce plan that emphasize the participation of the nationals, what kind of trainings that those companies need to provide in order to include the national workforce in the value chain. So this is an obligation. There is also another law that was approved in 2017, I believe, that obliges channeling a fund for the training. But this law, it's being how can I say, operationalized in order to see how companies can really address a part of that fund to train in local institutions. But it's not on the domain of INP, it's on the domain of the science and technology ministry.
Thank you, Natalia. And now the second question.
From our side, Rui,
yes.
All our contracts include minimum of 20% technical evaluation on local content, where the contractor needs to demonstrate that they are committed to local content, which is the employment of locals, development, and also skills transfer. But it varies from 20%, but it can increase to almost close to 100%, depending on the scope. But yeah, in terms of the capacity building, we launched a tender and we selected a company that is already in Mozambique as part of our local content to develop the other local suppliers. So we try to maximize by using local suppliers, and also it's going to be a lot of on-job training as well. There are a lot of aspects that you cannot learn on the classroom, so it has to be done practically on the field. Yeah, but the general answer is yes, we need the experience and skills transfer from international companies.
Thank you, Antonio. So the conclusion is that yes, Natalia.
I'm sorry. Yes, allow me just to add one few things. It's that all the positions non-qualified have to be for Mozambicans. This is something that it's in the law as well. And allow me also to highlight something from the Rovuma Basin project. All the Rovuma Basin project, they have a strategy which is local preferential recruitment when it comes, especially for this non-qualified positions. So they first prefer the local, the workforce that it's inside or near the project. So this is a very good strategy also to include the communities.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you. Okay, so it's clear that requirements around capacity building, knowledge transfer, etc., are really valued and even enforced by law. And so developers, producers, contractors must be aware and prepared to incorporate them on their strategies. And now the second question to finalize, from Miguel Joia Santos. The question is, access to finance for SMEs that are supplying the local content. We have only seen panelists discussing challenges and problems. Mozambique commercial banks and insurance companies have provided solutions and shared with the Total CCS JV. Why are these solutions not shared in the Total and CCSV events? I don't know if Thomas, if you are capable of addressing this question.
We'll be very transparent. So we are. The goal for us is not to replace the core experts of an industry. So we are fully relying on banking experts to provide financial solutions, etc. And as such, in our discussion, we'll share challenges we are facing so they can be addressed. This is, we're talking about access to finance, but same goes with other topic. We have quarterly contracting workshops. So there was a presentation by one of our partners that was made on related to access to finance solutions. And we, of course, invite to especially those quarterly contracting workshops, banking associations, but not limited to. It could be development financial institutions. Basically, all actors that implements financial solutions to support SMEs involved in our supply chain. We are welcoming them to participate. So there was a presentation in the last contracting workshop, which was in February 17th, 18th, and more will come in every quarter during every contracting workshop.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I think it was clear. I will now go for the presentation of the results from the poll question. We want to share with you the results. Just 1 second. So to remind the question, what can be the most impactful strategy to maximize local content in Mozambique's oil and gas industry? 52% of the audience respondents said or selected promoting the creation of joint ventures between international and local companies for technology and skills transfer. 24% upscaling education, 12% fostering an investor-friendly environment, 8% building industry investment centers, and 4% policy reforms. So I think the results are very, very clear.